Welcome back to Master Gardening. I'm your host, Bud Qualk. Today we're going to talk about hostas. We'll be right back. We're here today at the home of Paula Bright, Master Gardener, treasurer of the Purchase Area Master Gardeners here in Western Kentucky. And this is really neat. How long have you lived here?
7 years.
7? So all these beds are less than 7 years old.
Yep, some of them just a couple.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look at them here in a minute. But the reason we're here today mainly is about hostas. You're the Master Gardener, Kentucky's hosta guru. Now, how did that get started?
Well, in a previous house that we had, it had a lot of hostas in the ground, and they needed to be divided shortly after we got there. And I just started buying more of them because it's pretty much a plant that most anybody can be a successful gardener.
You have to really work at it to kill them, don't you?
You really have to work at it.
I'm going to show a couple here in a little bit that you've almost succeeded.
Right, I've almost succeeded in killing some, but you can always move them and bring them back.
Yeah, and once you have, like if you have 10, you're probably going to have 10 the rest of your life. Unless you divide them, then you're going to have 20 or 30 or 40. And
yes.
Yeah. Now there's one requirement. What's the one? It doesn't like the sun that much, does it?
Most hostas do best in the shade. There are some, and we're going to see examples of some, that you can sneak out in the sun a little bit, but most of them do like the shade. So for people that have yards full of trees, it's a great plant to have.
Yeah, and I hear so many people say, I don't have any sun in my yard. Well,
That's great
I almost
for
wish
hostas.
I had that sometimes.
That's
And especially
exactly
this time of year when it's so hot and everything's so dry. We finally had that rain and saved us a little bit. But
hostas are very drought tolerant too.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, great.
They really work well when you don't have a lot of sun. You're not going to kill them, water, because you're not going to kill them just for lack of water. You can have a little reprieve there.
So that's it's going to be one of the best plants for gardeners that really can't give it the attention that most.
That's exactly
very low
right.
maintenance.
That's exactly right.
Let's go out and start looking at some of these. Okay, a lot of them are in bloom. Some of them are past bloom. Some are getting ready to bloom. But let's go take a look at some of them.
Okay.
Paula, you've really got a big clump of hostas here. Most of them look like the same variety. What variety is this?
This is a variety called Ventricosa, and you'll notice that it's really green toward the center of the bed where the tree is, where it gets most shade. It's really dark and pretty back there. And as you move toward the sunlight and where the plant gets more sun during the day, you'll see it's more of a chartreuse. Many hostas get more sun, they change color and they lighten up. And this particular one is just that way. You can see also a little bit of the leaves here where it's gotten a little too much sun, they're a little bit scorched. But you can always cut those off and neaten the bed up.
Yeah, you just prune those off and even the yellow tips if you want to do that too. Now, in the spring, it didn't look like this in the spring, was it?
No, in the spring it's just a beautiful green. Each plant is a beautiful green mound. And as the scapes come out, they bloom, and then a little later, probably in another week or two, I'll go in here and cut all these off back to the base of the plant, and then I'll have a nice neat border again for the rest of the summer until we get a hard killing frost, and then it'll all just go away.
Now, where'd you get all these? Did they all come from one plant, or did you buy these at the Master Gardener plant sale, or where'd you get these?
This particular variety I got from my aunt, actually. She had huge plants right out in the middle of the sun, and I divided them and brought them back here and started out with 3 or 4, and you can see what I have now.
So these all really came from one plant, basically?
They all came from one plant.
Oh my.
Hosta is a plant that's very inexpensive to have too.
Now you talk about shade. What do we mean by shade? Does it mean partial shade, dappled shade? What do they like the best? Full shade?
There really is no best. Each variety has its own degree of liking sun or shade. You'll notice this golden tiara down here, the little leaf one. It doesn't like sun nearly as much as the one next to it, and you can see it's a bit more scorched. It's also a little less drought tolerant. But this one is more of a chartreuse and light color all the time anyway. But you have to play with them and read the label at the garden center and play with them in the sun and shade. Some like very heavy shade. We're going to see some of those in a minute. Some of them, like these, can stand even sunlight. So each one has its different degree of tolerance for the sun. And they do change color as they get different light.
As we talked earlier, these really look healthy, and I know the sun's getting to them a little bit right now, but there are some plants up by the road I think that you said you've had a lot of trouble with. Let's go up there and take a look at those.
Yes, let's look at those.
This is one of your beds out by your driveway by the road, Paula, and we're looking at some hostas here that look like they're little tiny babies just been planted. Is that right?
They sure look like that, but that's very, very far from the case. But these are 3 different plants that I got from the Master Gardener plant sale. And when I bought them, they were regular nursery stock, beautiful in the pots, coming out just looking great. And you can see the way they look now. They were the Hosta of the Year varieties, I believe, for 2001 and 2002. But basically, these hostas don't like where they are. They're either getting too much sun or too much shade, and the dirt is not good. And so what you see is they come up every year, and they do put out a little bit, but they're not big and pretty like the ones we just saw. And so what needs to happen here is you need to dig these up and put them in a better spot. I've done this before with as little as 1 leaf coming out of the ground. And if you'll just rescue the plant, put it in a great bed where the soil is good, you'll have no problem.
Now, what time of year would be best to move them?
Hostas do best moving just about any time. There's really no bad time to move them, except that when you move them in the middle of the summer, like now, you've got to keep them watered all the time. So if you're one of those gardeners that doesn't have time to water and maintain, do it in the early fall. Or just when it begins to peek through the ground in the spring, and you shouldn't have any trouble. Probably early fall would be best.
And peeking through the ground, we're going to look at dividing some hostas here in a little bit, and that's the main way you multiply your hostas. They don't do well from seeds, do they?
No, you need to get the nursery stock or do the dividing.
Yeah, but they don't come up true when you use the seeds. And
No.
I've never seen them come up. They say they re-sow, but I've never seen the hostas come up from seeds.
I haven't seen that happen either.
But normally, and I do this, but evidently you can do it about any time. I usually divide mine in the spring when you see the little nubs come out of the ground.
When
Is
you
that not
see
the
the
best
fingers come out of the ground like this, you just dig the whole clump up and take a knife and divide them. That's the best time to divide them, because what happens is the leaves go ahead and come out and the plant looks brand new, and you can't ever tell that it was touched. Many people don't have the luxury of catching them when they just come out of the ground, so it's no problem to divide them when they're a big plant right in the middle of the summer, and we can do that.
That brings up another point. You don't see them all winter long.
No.
So you probably, if you're going to be planting new things, you might want to mark where those are just in case.
Absolutely. I've been caught many a time planting something over the top of my hosta, only to discover when I push my spade down that, whoops, that was my hosta and I have to move. So.
I've planted hostas on top of hostas before. That's it. Well, we talked about dividing them. Let's go around back and divide one.
Okay.
Okay? Paula, we talked about dividing hostas, and here's one in a pot, and normally you would just dig it up out of the ground, but this is as close to simulating that as we should.
This will be perfect. And actually, you could do this from the nursery this way. You'll see in just a minute, but we're going to transplant it, and so it's going to struggle, to develop its roots in the ground. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go down here and cut off all of these blooms, because if the plant has bloom on it, it's going to take energy away from the root building. So anytime you're trying to develop the plant in the ground, you want to go ahead and cut those blooms off and don't let it bloom. So now that those are off, we want to get the plant out of the pot. So let's press on it a little bit
full,
here.
so
It's full.
It's going to simulate.
If you'll pull the pot,
there you go.
Now you can see here.
Good roots.
The pot, it has great roots. Yeah, it really does. But see how the plant has different, I don't know what you would call those little segments coming out. So what we're going to do here is we want to get this one into a different, this one right here into a different plant, separate it from the rest of the plant. So what I've got here is just a regular kitchen paring knife, and I'm going to just go through here in between, pretty close, as close as I can get, and I'm just going to cut it just like I would bread or anything else.
Pretty tough, isn't it?
It's kind of tough, but
there it is.
There we go.
Not bad.
Now, here we have 2 plants, but we could cut this again and get 2 plants. And don't worry about this being small, because next year this will be huge, and this will be a nice plant too. And then when we look at the rest of it here, you've got the potential for 3 more plants here. So here we bought 1 plant from the nursery, and that's easily 5.
Yes.
So, Hosta is something, like I said, that's not real expensive to have.
This one cost about $10 a piece, so we got about $50, $60 worth of hostas here.
That's right.
For $10.
One time when I moved, I dug my hostas up and divided them, and I put the old plants back in the ground so that the house I bought would have the same plants that I had sold the house to have. And then I took all of them and put them in pots. And I stuck them in the woods in the shade behind an apartment while we were building this house. So when we moved here, I had about 30 pots of hostas that I brought over here.
Okay. You got a hosta on you.
Right.
Okay, and in the spring, now you wouldn't have all this leaves here, you just had the little nub sticking up.
That's right.
I'm bad, I don't use a knife, I use a shovel and just...
Yeah, I do that too.
They're pretty tough. So if you cut the roots and stuff, they're going to make it probably.
They're
You're going to be
still
all right.
going to make it, that's right.
Very seldom do you cut them in two and they don't make it.
That's right, as long as you keep them watered if it's in the middle of the summer.
So with buying one plant at the nursery, you got a whole bed of hostas here.
That's right. You could have done the bed that we looked at in the first of the segment.
So when you're at the nursery, you kind of look at and people don't always do this, but you need to do this with everything. Pull that plant out of the pot, and you can take a better look at it with the pot, out of the pot. You can see the root structure.
That's right.
Because sometimes they'll stick a plant in a big pot, and you'd be paying for the size of the pot, and really when you pull it out, there's nothing left but a little bitty plant in a big pot.
Little plant in a big pot. But this one is a really great one.
Bud did good, didn't he?
He did.
Okay, well let's, I'll tell you what, you said there's your neighbor's got a really nice hosta up here we're going to go look at. Did you tell me that earlier?
Yes.
Okay, let's go on over and take a look at that one next.
All right.
Don't fall off, our insurance will not cover this.
Someday, I'll be a ballerina, just like them. And this will be my stage, where I twirl and float and swirl, for all the people looking at me. Someday, this won't just be my wish. Someday, I won't be sick.
It's kind of rough driving around in your golf cart like this. Well, I can see it from here. They're just coming into bloom.
Right. This is
beautiful.
Really pretty bed. I just can't get over how well it's done.
Just been watered, looks like, too.
Yep. This is a variety called Patriot, and I believe, and it's just beginning to bloom, and it's fairly new bed, but isn't the contrast between the dark mulch and the white and the green leaves just beautiful?
It's just perfect in there. Just perfect stage of bloom. There's not even a dead flower on any of them hardly. Perfect.
And mixed in with the Pachysandra, it's just great. And also, she has some red caladiums over there by the bench.
Oh,
and
yeah, I love caladiums.
The mix is just spectacular.
Oh my. And it's cool up in here. It must be 15 degrees cooler than it was out there on the golf course.
This is heavy shade, and so this is obviously a variety that really likes that heavy shade. And she doesn't seem to have any much burning and no pests.
I don't see any. Maybe a little bit of cutting here. And I pulled some snails off that one I bought this morning for our division.
Snails and slugs are about the only problem that you'll have with hosta. And you're always trying to fight the snails and slugs, but I generally don't have any problem with them.
I don't have much trouble, and some of the leaves got a little bit of that on the sides, but really you can't hardly tell it.
No.
It's variegated like that. And that's really, you don't have any diseases really, just the slugs and the snails, and that's it.
Right. One of the things that you want to do, much like this homeowner has done, is plan the color in your bed, and sometimes you can go from light to dark and dark to light by using the chartreuses like we saw in the Southern Substance and the Gold Standard, and the dark colors. And most of the time, it really makes a contrast and draws your eye into a particular portion of your bed when you use something like a variegated or a chartreuse. So you can use it to direct the eye of someone who might be walking through your yard. And sometimes we still have, you know, things that come up like the one that had the root problem a few minutes ago.
Yes.
And generally what I do there is I pull it up and look to see if there are any bugs or anything eating at the roots.
Do you wash the roots off?
Well,
Have you ever done that?
you could. I kind of just shake them and put them back. But if you don't see any problem, you can do that. But if the plant looks too damaged, you're better off just dividing another one and putting a new plant back in that one little spot when you find a problem.
Is it good to fertilize when you plant them?
You can, yes, you can with just regular 10-10-10. They really
10-10-10.
don't take a lot of fancy fertilizer, and you certainly don't have to.
And again, you can go to these stores and buy these very expensive small containers of fertilizer, but if you can get the big bag, the 10-10-10, 15-15-15, it's basically the same thing, and it's a lot cheaper if you can go that way.
And if you're trying to get your plants to multiply and get bigger quicker, just make sure you cut those blooms off.
Oh, that's right.
Make sure you take those blooms off, and certainly don't let them go to seed. Because they will develop seed pods just right after these blooms drop off. The seed pods will come right up here and just be there the rest of the fall. So if you're trying to make particularly this plant go, right now would be the perfect time to cut them, because all that energy would go into the roots and develop a bigger plant next year.
And put them in a vase and put them in your living room.
Right.
Perfectly, yes.
Right.
Now I have heard of, but I've never seen anybody that really didn't care for the blooms. Some hostas, the blooms are prettier than others, but they would come in there as soon as this come up and they'd chop them off just because they like the plant better than the blooms.
Right, there's no problem with that.
And then I told you about some that haven't bloomed at my house now, that the blooms are about, I'd say they're 5 or 6 times as big as these. They're solid white, and the aroma coming of the fragrance coming out of those is just wonderful. And
some of them
these
have great fragrance, others don't have any. Some of them bloom all along the scape like we've seen earlier today. Others bloom right at the top in a little cluster. So every hosta is a little different. Some of them are bright white, some of them are cream, some of them are a light lavender like this, and some of them are the deep purple and blue like we saw earlier.
Now, if somebody was, I know you can go on the internet, but are some books, I know there's some books back at the house that you, special books you like.
Yeah, you want to go look at those?
Sure. Paula, please thank your neighbor. That was wonderful design over there she's got with those hostas and the caladiums.
She was awful sweet to let us come and see those beautiful
Oh, you
hostas.
got permission? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sure did.
All right. Well, there's a couple books here that you say are your favorite books.
Well, there are lots of books on the market about hostas, and about any of them they just identify the varieties. You know, when hostas were first beginning over in England, there were only 2 or 3 varieties, and now there are literally thousands. And so these books are just give you a good guide to, you know, pointers to know and things to look for. And when you're trying to plan for the different color in your garden and how much variegation, it can help you a little bit.
And somebody like me, I've got a bunch of different hostas, but I have no idea what any of them are.
You can identify them.
There you are. Yeah, I can start making signs.
Just get the latest books and you can identify them.
Okay, and we don't want to forget, these books are at the library probably too.
Probably too.
Similar books anyway. So you really don't have to buy any books. Just borrow the book for a week or so and identify your hostas.
Right.
Okay, let's go back to the garden for a minute.
Okay.
Paul, this is really a neat bed.
It has lots of hosta in it, Bud.
Yeah, let's, here's one that hadn't even bloomed yet.
Right. These are, the scapes are just beginning to come up, and if you'll pull this up here a little bit and show the plant back here, we have 3 hostas here. And you can see how that hydrangea has come over it. And what I will do next is I will probably dig this back one and put it somewhere else where it can be seen, because the plant this year kind of covered over it. And that's one thing we always have to do, is move things around in our garden. But this is a nice little variegated plant, and it'll never get much bigger than this. This is a smaller variety.
Got a lot of shade back here, and the plant looks beautiful. There's hardly any sun damage or burning or anything on that one.
Right.
Beautiful. Okay, there's a big one back here. Let's go back here and look at this bigger one.
Okay. Yes, this one, believe it or not, this is only the 2nd year for this plant, and I put them in last spring. This is a variety called Sum and Substance, and it is bright chartreuse green, and you notice how big the leaves are. The leaves on this plant are just like elephant ears. They're huge. This plant will get a lot bigger over time. It can be 3 to 4 feet tall and probably 4 or 5 feet wide. And if I have a problem with where I've put these, it'll be that they're too close together. And then you'll notice underneath there, I've got another variety, the gold standard, that is a more dwarf. And this plant is almost exactly the same size as the one we just looked at prior to this one, but you'll notice, I mean, it's so much smaller. Hostas come in all different sizes, from little teaspoon size all the way up to giant. And this one is getting ready to bloom.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. That one's almost in perfect bloom. This one's a little bit earlier, so they bloom all year long, and I've even heard of them blooming in the fall, but I don't have any like that, do you?
I don't. Every variety blooms at a different time. Now, I did have the Aurora Borealis that is recovering in a bed over here that I almost killed, and it blooms later in the fall. Yeah. But it blooms later in the fall.
Love the lines in these. And this is just that. If you're doing arrangements or something, one of the small ones would be perfect in an arrangement, a flower arrangement of some kind.
Yeah, these make really good additions to flower arrangements. You mentioned the different bloom times. They all come up out of the ground in the spring at different times. Some of them will come up as early as March, and some of them don't break ground until almost May.
Oh my!
So when you're planting in the springtime, you really have to watch. Not to damage them and walk on them.
Yes,
when they're coming up.
Mark them.
So.
Now this is perfect this year, but and now next year you might decide to take the middle one out maybe and move it somewhere else because of the size. It's going to be too big for
I could. This year the laurels suffered a burn, and the laurel bushes were about double the height, so I'm going to let them grow on back up, and if they get back to the height that they used to be, I may not have to do any moving.
Mine
we'll
did
see.
exactly the same thing, and I cut them back like that, and now
right.
they're doing
and
great.
Now they're looking great.
But they look rough this spring. I thought I lost one of mine. Okay, let's go over and take a look at this bed over here that needs some work. Get some extra pairs of shears?
Yes, I even brought some for you.
Okay.
Mornings are the toughest. Sometimes you gotta cover 3 states in 4 days. Not easy.
Right, and it's over there. You're gonna get that from him.
We are in the studio with Valerie from Groove Lily. Tell me, how long have you guys been out on the road promoting this album?
We're pretty much always on the road. It kind of never stops. We are relentless road warriors. Out and back, out and back. Come on, guys, let's do it. Gene, how's it going over there? I'm basically the leader of our band. I'm in many ways the driving force behind our career. The fact that I've decided to go for my music career and succeed or die trying is, I think, a function of the confidence that I got from being in the military.
The qualities you take with you from time spent in the military are qualities that stay with you forever. Today's military.
Bud, this is a bed that gets really out of control. Normally I would have cut these spikes about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and generally I cut them all and put them all by themselves in a big vase because it just makes a beautiful flower arrangement. But what we're going to do here is we're going to trim these back. We're going to begin to trim them and show how that we can clean the bed up, and it'll just look beautiful the rest of the summer.
Completely different looking bed once you get all those off of there.
You can see how it's just laying everywhere, making it difficult to mow, and they're past their prime. They're not quite as pretty. So
the bumblebees seem to like it.
That's right.
Now where do you cut? You just
go down toward where the leaves are and just start snipping them off.
Down low as you can.
Low as you can.
Just out of sight.
Out of sight, that's right. And we'll just snip. In just a minute, we'll have them all off.
This is a lot like daylilies, but you're not supposed to do daylilies till they get brown enough to pull.
That's right. Okay, we're down to the last one.
That's the one we've been looking for right there.
Now, if these were in their prime, I would just cut these stems off and put them in a vase. They'd be going in every different direction, but when you have hundreds of them in there, they're really pretty.
Oh my, yeah, some of them may be okay anyway as they are.
Yeah, but anyway, one thing that you need to know about this green particular variety right here is that It used to be the undulata variety. It used to be striped, variegated with white and green. And one thing that does happen to many of the undulata varieties is that they will go back to green. And so there's not much you can do to delay that process, especially if you're wanting the green and white stripe in your garden, other than divide them frequently, because they'll eventually revert to their natural green, and you'll lose all the white.
Nothing you can do with the pH of the soil or anything like that, like the
No.
hydrangeas?
No. Another thing that you'll notice here is I have a problem with something eating at the roots of this little one right here. That one should be the same size as all the rest, and it needs to be lifted and cleaned off and see what the problem is, and maybe divide some of these and replace it, because it's causing a little hole in my bed there.
It's a little dead center too, doggone it.
Yeah.
Okay, behind you, Paula, now we've got one back here that is really special. It's got about 3 different colors on it.
Yes, this is another variegated variety. It's just beginning to bloom, and you'll notice I have it in a pot grouping here. And
Do they do well in pots?
Hosta is great in pots. Do you know, I work so much, I just don't get to water the plants, and this is particularly one that I never water. I haven't watered this since the spring, and just look at it. They do great in pots. Now, not out in the sun. This is in the shade, remember, but
That's right.
still, I really don't have to do a lot to it to make it look just like this.
And most plants in the summer in the pots, you have to water them almost
right, this
every day.
wintered in this pot.
Outside?
Outside.
I gotta try that. That's special.
Yep.
Paula, what's this little baby right here?
This is the first hosta I ever bought, and it got huge and beautiful, and I decided to move it, and I almost killed it. And so it is recovering in this bed. I've put it more out here in the sun, and I've really beefed up the soil in there. And you can pull this back and take a look. I've really beefed up the soil, and you can see how small it is. This was down to 1 or 2 leaves last year, just like the ones we saw earlier up by the road. And you can see how it's really, it's developing. It's even trying to bloom a little bit, and it's coming back, and it's getting eaten a little bit here. But next year, in the spring, I'm going to be able to lift this and put it back in one of my shade beds, and it will be it'll probably be this tall and maybe this big around next year. So I did manage to save it, I believe.
You almost lost it. Reclamation project.
Right, that's what it is. But you can kind of reclaim them like this.
Yeah, put them somewhere where the soil's real good for a change,
right.
And just like a little nursery type thing.
Right, and that's what I need to do with the ones that we looked at earlier.
All right. Well, I really thank you for all your time today.
You're welcome.
You've got a wonderful garden. I wish I could spend more time here. Maybe I can come back?
Anytime.
Okay. We're going to say goodbye to Master Gardening here at Paula Bright's wonderful garden. I'm your host, Bud Qualk. Happy gardening. We'll see you next time. We'll see you.